The afternoon sun was beating down on the old highway diner somewhere in rural Pennsylvania. It was one of those classic American roadside restaurants that you'd see in old movies. Red leather booths, checkered floors, and a long counter with spinning stools. The kind of place where truckers stopped for coffee and families grabbed burgers on road trips. Inside, a young waitress named Lisa was wiping down tables after the lunch rush. She'd been on her feet since 6 in the morning, and it was now almost 3 in the afternoon. Her feet ached, but she kept that warm smile on her face. She had to. This job was everything to her right now. Lisa was a single mother. Her little girl, only 7 years old, had been diagnosed with a serious illness 6 months ago. The medical bills were piling up faster than she could count them. Insurance covered some of it, but not nearly enough. So Lisa worked double shifts, sometimes triple shifts, picking up every extra hour she could get at the diner. She never complained, though. Her coworkers knew her situation, and they tried to help when they could. The owner, an old man everyone called Pops, was kind enough to let her work as many hours as she needed. He was 72 years old and moved slowly with his walking stick, but he had a heart of gold. On this particular Saturday, things had been quiet after the lunch crowd left. Just a few customers scattered around, an elderly couple sharing a piece of apple pie, a truck driver reading his newspaper while sipping coffee, and in the corner booth by the window, a large man wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses, quietly eating a burger. Lisa didn't pay much attention to him. People came and went all day long. Some wanted to chat, others just wanted to eat in peace. She respected that. As long as they were nice and tipped reasonably, she was happy. She was just thinking about taking a quick break when she heard it. The rumbling sound of motorcycles. Not just one or two, but several. The noise got louder and louder until 5 big Harley-Davidson bikes pulled into the parking lot. The sound was so loud that everyone in the diner looked up from what they were doing. 5 men climbed off their bikes. They were all wearing leather jackets, heavy boots, and bandanas. The kind of group that made people nervous just by looking at them. They weren't your average motorcycle enthusiasts out for a Sunday ride. These guys had an edge to them. The way they walked, the way they talked, everything about them screamed trouble. They pushed through the diner's door and the little bell above it rang. But the cheerful sound didn't match the atmosphere they brought with them. They were loud, laughing roughly, making crude jokes as they walked in. Other customers glanced at them nervously and then quickly looked away. The group made their way to a large booth in the middle of the diner and sprawled out like they owned the place. They were talking loud enough for everyone to hear, using language that made the elderly couple in the corner shift uncomfortably in their seats. Lisa took a deep breath. She'd dealt with difficult customers before. You couldn't work in a diner for 5 years without learning how to handle all types of people. She grabbed her notepad, put on her best professional smile, and walked over to their table. "Good afternoon, gentlemen. Welcome to our diner. Can I start you off with some drinks?" she asked politely. The men stopped talking and looked at her. Their leader, a big guy with a thick beard and a snake tattoo that crawled up his neck and behind his ear, looked her up and down in a way that made her uncomfortable, but she kept her smile steady. Well, he said with a smirk. "Aren't you a sweet little thing? What's your name, darling?" Lisa felt her stomach tighten, but she maintained her professionalism. "I'm Lisa, and I'll be taking care of you today. Now what can I get you to drink?" "Taking care of us? I like the sound of that," one of the other men said, and they all burst into laughter. She ignored the comment. "Coffee? Soda? We have iced tea freshly made." They ordered their drinks, and she quickly walked away to get them. In the kitchen, she let out a long breath. Pops looked at her with concern. "Those guys giving you trouble already?" he asked. "Nothing I can't handle," Lisa said, though her hands were shaking slightly as she filled their glasses. "Just the usual jerks who think they're funny." She carried the drinks back out on a tray. As she set them down on the table, the leader deliberately moved his hand so she almost spilled one of the glasses. His friends laughed like it was the funniest thing they'd ever seen. "Careful there, sweetheart. You almost made a mess," he said with a mean grin. "My apologies," Lisa said, even though it wasn't her fault. "Are you ready to order food?" They took their time. making her stand there while they slowly looked through the menu, making jokes and comments that got progressively more inappropriate. She wrote down their orders, her cheeks burning with embarrassment and frustration. But she needed this job. She needed every dollar she could make. So she smiled, nodded, and took their order to the kitchen. Meanwhile, the man in the baseball cap and sunglasses in the corner booth was watching everything. He'd noticed the bikers the moment they walked in. He'd seen how they treated Lisa. He'd heard their comments. And he didn't like it one bit. Most people wouldn't have recognized him sitting there. Without the bright lights, the cameras, and the roaring crowds, John Cena looked like any other guy taking a break during a road trip. He was driving cross-country, enjoying a rare few days off from his crazy schedule. He'd pulled off the highway looking for a quiet place to grab some food, and this diner seemed perfect. He'd been enjoying his burger and the peaceful atmosphere until these guys showed up. Now he was alert, watching the situation carefully. He'd spent his whole career standing up for people who needed help. It was more than just his public image. It was who he was at his core. And something about this situation was setting off alarm bells in his head. Lisa came back with their food about 20 minutes later. She was trying to balance multiple plates, moving carefully. As she started setting them down, the leader suddenly grabbed his plate before she could put it down properly. "What's this?" he said loudly, staring at his steak. "I said medium rare. This looks like shoe leather." Lisa looked at the steak. It actually looked perfectly cooked, but she wasn't going to argue. "I'm so sorry, sir. Let me take it back and have the cook make you a new one right away." "You're sorry?" He mocked her voice. "Yeah, you will be sorry." The other customers in the diner were watching now, but no one said anything. The truck driver had put down his newspaper. The elderly couple looked worried. Even Pops had come out from the kitchen, leaning on his walking stick by the counter. And in the corner booth, John Cena slowly put down his burger. He took off his sunglasses and placed them on the table. His jaw tightened as he watched what was happening. Something was about to go very wrong, and he was getting ready to do something about it. Lisa reached out to take the plate with the steak back to the kitchen, but before her fingers could even touch it, the leader's hand shot out and grabbed her wrist. Not gently. Not like he was trying to get her attention. He grabbed it hard, his thick fingers wrapping around her arm like a vice. "Where do you think you're going?" he growled, his voice low and threatening. Lisa's heart jumped into her throat. She tried to pull her hand back, but his grip was too strong. "Sir, please let go. I'm just trying to fix your order." "I don't want." "It fixed," he said, his face twisted into an ugly sneer. "I want to know why you brought me garbage in the first place. You trying to disrespect me?" "No, sir, not at all," Lisa said, her voice shaking now. She could feel all eyes in the diner on her. "It was just a mistake. Please let me make it right." But he wasn't interested in making anything right. He was enjoying this, enjoying the power he had over her, enjoying making her squirm. His friends were grinning, watching the show like it was entertainment. "A mistake?" he repeated loudly, making sure everyone could hear. "You know what I think? I think you did this on purpose. Probably thought you could serve us whatever trash you wanted because of how we look." That wasn't true at all. Lisa treated every customer the same way, with respect and kindness. But this man wasn't looking for the truth. He was looking for an excuse to cause trouble. She tried one more time to pull her hand back. "Sir, please. You're hurting me." And that's when he did it. With a sudden shove, he pushed her backward. Hard. Lisa stumbled, her feet tangling beneath her. Her notepad flew out of her other hand, pages fluttering through the air. She reached out blindly, trying to catch herself, and her hand slammed down on an empty table nearby. She barely managed to stay on her feet, her hip hitting the edge of the table hard enough that she knew she'd have a bruise tomorrow. The diner went completely silent. That kind of heavy, awful silence where everyone knows something terrible just happened, but no one knows what to do about it. The bikers burst into laughter. Loud, cruel laughter that echoed off the walls of the small diner. They were slapping the table, high-fiving each other, acting like pushing a woman who was just trying to do her job was the funniest thing in the world. Lisa stood there frozen, her hands still gripping the edge of the table. She was shaking. Not just her hands, but her whole body. And then she felt the tears coming. She tried so hard to hold them back. She didn't want to cry in front of these men. Didn't want to. Give them the satisfaction of seeing how much they'd hurt her. But these weren't tears of pain. Her hip hurt, sure, and her wrist was throbbing where he'd grabbed her. But that wasn't why she was crying. She was crying because she felt so helpless, so small, so humiliated in front of everyone. She thought about her little girl at home waiting for her. She thought about the medical bills sitting on her kitchen table. She thought about how she couldn't afford to lose this job no matter what. Even if these men treated her like dirt, even if they pushed her around, she had to take it. She had no choice. The elderly couple in the corner looked horrified, but they were in their 80s. What could they do? The truck driver was half standing, like he wanted to help, but he sat back down when the bikers turned their attention toward him. Nobody wanted to be the next target. From the kitchen, Pops had seen everything. The old man was already moving, pushing through the swinging door with his walking stick tapping on the floor. But he was 72 years old, his body worn down from decades of hard work. He moved slowly, each step an effort. "Hey, that's enough," Pops shouted, his voice cracking with age but strong with anger. "You don't treat people like that in my diner. You need to leave right now." The leader turned to look at Pops, and his grin got even wider. "Or what, old man? You gonna make us?" His friends laughed again, the sound like hyenas circling their prey. Pops kept coming, gripping his walking stick tighter. Lisa wanted to tell him to stop, to go back to the kitchen where it was safe, but her voice wouldn't work. The words were stuck in her throat. "I'm calling the police," Pops said, reaching for the phone on the wall behind the counter. "Go ahead," the leader said, leaning back in his booth like he didn't have a care in the world. "We'll be long gone before they show up. This town probably has, 2 cops? And they're probably having donuts somewhere right now." His friends found this hilarious. They were getting louder now, more aggressive. One of them picked up a salt shaker and tossed it in the air, catching it like a ball. Another one put his feet up on the booth, his dirty boots leaving marks on the red leather. Lisa finally found her voice. "Please," she said quietly. "Just take your food and go. You don't have to pay. Just please leave." The leader looked at her, and for a second she thought maybe he would. Maybe he'd gotten whatever sick satisfaction he was looking for. But then his expression changed. Got darker, meaner. "Now why would we do that?" he said. "We're paying customers. We have a right to be here, unless you're discriminating against us." It was a trap. Whatever she said, he'd twist it. If she said yes, he'd cause more trouble. If she said no, he'd keep tormenting her. There was no winning here. The other customers were starting to pull out their phones. Some were probably calling 911. Others were recording, fingers shaking as they held up their cameras. In today's world, everything got filmed. Everything ended up online. But that didn't seem to bother these men at all. Lisa bent down to pick up her notepad, her hands still trembling. She just wanted this to end. Wanted them to leave. Wanted to go home, hug her daughter, and forget this day ever happened. But it wasn't going to end. Not yet. Because in the corner booth, something was happening. The large man in the baseball cap was standing up. Not quickly, not making a big show of it, but deliberately, purposefully, like a soldier getting ready for battle. He placed his sunglasses carefully on the table next to his half-eaten burger. Without them, his face was fully visible now. And if anyone in that diner had been paying attention, if they'd looked close enough, they would have recognized him immediately. John Cena had seen enough. He'd given these men every chance to do the right thing, to apologize, to leave peacefully. But they'd crossed a line that he couldn't ignore. He'd spent his entire career standing up for people who couldn't defend themselves. He'd visited sick kids in hospitals. He'd worked with anti-bullying campaigns. He'd made it his mission to use his platform for good. And right now, right here in this small diner on a quiet Saturday afternoon, someone needed help. His jaw was set, his eyes focused. He took one step away from his booth, then another. The sound of his boots on the checkered floor seemed louder than it should have been. Or maybe it was just that everyone was so quiet now, watching, waiting to see what would happen next. Lisa looked up from where she was gathering the scattered pages of her notepad. She saw him walking toward them, this stranger who'd been sitting quietly in the corner. And something in his posture, in the way he moved, made her feel the strangest thing. Hope. The bikers hadn't noticed him yet. They were too busy laughing, too caught up in their own cruelty. But they were about to, because John Cena was done watching. It was time to act. John Cena walked steadily across the diner floor, his footsteps measured and calm. He wasn't rushing, wasn't trying to intimidate anyone with an aggressive approach. But there was something about the way he moved that made people notice, a quiet confidence, the kind that comes from someone who's absolutely certain about what they're doing. He stopped about 3 feet from the biker's table, close enough to be part of the conversation, but not so close that it felt like an immediate threat. He stood there for a moment, just looking at them. His arms hung relaxed at his sides. His expression was calm, almost friendly, but his eyes told a different story. "Excuse me, gentlemen," he said, his voice clear and steady. "I think you owe the lady an apology." The diner seemed to hold its breath. Lisa looked up at this stranger who just stepped into her nightmare, her eyes wide with surprise and fear. Not fear of him, but fear for him. These were dangerous men, and he was just one person. The biker's leader turned slowly in his seat, looking up at John Cena with a mixture of annoyance and amusement. For a few seconds, he didn't recognize him. Just saw a big guy in a t-shirt and jeans who'd made a very stupid decision. "I'm sorry. Did someone ask for your opinion?" the leader said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. His friends chuckled, turning in their seats to see who was dumb enough to get involved in their business. "Nobody had to ask," John replied calmly. "When you see something wrong, you speak up. That's just being a decent human being. And what you just did to her? That was wrong. So I'm giving you a chance to make it right." One of the other bikers, a thin guy with greasy hair and a scar across his cheek, squinted at John. Then his eyes went wide. "Holy. Wait a minute. Is that—" The leader looked harder at John's face. Recognition dawned slowly, and when it did, his expression changed. But it didn't soften. Instead, he got more defensive, more aggressive. Like being confronted by someone famous made it even worse. Well, the leader said, standing up from the booth. He was a big man, probably 6'2", broad-shouldered and thick with muscle. The kind of guy who was used to being the most intimidating person in any room. "If it isn't John Cena, what are you gonna do, wrestle me?" His friends laughed, but it sounded forced now. They were standing up too, forming a loose semicircle, 5 against 1. They liked those odds. "Wrestling's entertainment," John said, not moving an inch. "What you did to that waitress, that was real. Real disrespectful. Real cowardly. Pushing around someone who can't fight back. Someone who's just trying to earn a living. That make you feel big? Feel tough?" The leader's face flushed red. He didn't like being called a coward, especially not in front of his crew. "You need to mind your own business, celebrity. Go back to your movies and your TV shows. This is the real world." "I am minding my business," John replied. "See, I make it my business to stand up for people who need it. I've done it my whole career. Visited thousands of sick kids, worked with anti-bullying programs, stood up for people who couldn't defend themselves. You think I'm going to stop just because I'm off camera?" Pops was still standing by the counter, phone in hand. He dialed 911 and dispatch could hear everything happening. The elderly couple had moved toward the door, ready to leave if things got violent. The truck driver was recording on his phone now, and so were a couple of other customers. Everyone knew this was either going to end peacefully or very, very badly. Lisa wanted to say something, to tell this stranger to just leave it alone, that she was okay. But she wasn't okay, and they both knew it. And something about the way he stood there, calm and unafraid, made her feel protected for the first time since those bikers had walked through the door. "You know what your problem is?" the leader said, taking a step closer to John. "You think because you're famous, because you're on TV, that you're better than us? That you can tell us what to do?" "I don't think I'm better than anyone," John said quietly, "but I know right from wrong. And what you did was wrong. Simple as that. Now you've got 2 choices here. You can apologize to the lady, pay for your food, and leave peacefully. Or we can wait for the police to show up and you can explain to them why you assaulted a waitress." The thin biker with the scar moved to John's left, while another one shifted to his right. They were trying to surround him, looking for an advantage, but John had been in enough real confrontations to know what was happening. He adjusted his stance slightly, keeping all of them in his line of sight. "Assaulted?" The leader scoffed. "I barely touched her. She's fine. Aren't you fine, sweetheart?" He looked at Lisa with a mocking expression. Lisa's voice came out smaller than she wanted. Please just go. All of you. I don't want any trouble, see? She's fine, the leader said, spreading his arms wide like he'd just proven his point. No harm, no foul. So why don't you sit down, finish your burger, and forget you saw anything? John shook his head slowly. That's not how this works. You don't get to hurt someone and then act like it didn't happen just because she's too scared to press charges. Scared? The leader laughed. She should be scared. This is a rough world. Maybe she learned a valuable lesson today about toughening up. That was it. That comment crossed a line that made John's calm exterior crack just a little. His jaw tightened and his voice dropped lower. The only lesson here is the one you're about to learn. About consequences. About how actions matter. About how there are still people in this world who won't just stand by and watch bullies do whatever they want. The tension in the diner was suffocating now. It felt like the air itself was pressing down on everyone. The leader's hands had curled into fists. His friends had spread out more, creating space between themselves, ready to jump in if things went physical. In the distance, very faint but getting louder, came the sound of sirens. The thin biker heard it first. Hey man, we should probably— Shut up, the leader snapped. But you could see the calculation happening in his eyes. He was weighing his options. Fight a celebrity while being recorded on multiple phones with the cops already on the way? That was a losing proposition no matter how it played out. But his pride wouldn't let him back down so easily. Not in front of his crew. Not in front of everyone watching. You think you're a hero? He said to John, taking another step closer. They were almost face to face now. You think you saved the day? I think I did what anyone should do, John replied. Stand up when someone needs help. It's not complicated. It's not heroic. It's just being a decent person. The sirens were getting closer. Maybe a minute away, maybe less. The leader looked around the diner, saw all the phones pointed at him, saw the fear on people's faces, saw the disgust too. He was being recorded, and he knew how this looked. Knew that these videos would be online within minutes. The whole world would see him for exactly what he was. This ain't over, he muttered, but even as he said it, he was backing up. His friends were already moving toward the door, pulling out their wallets and throwing cash on the table. More than enough to cover their bill. They wanted out before the cops arrived, but John didn't move. He stood exactly where he was, making sure they all left. Making sure Lisa was safe. The leader backed up to the door, pointing a finger at John like he was making some kind of threat. But it was empty. Everyone knew it. Come on. One of his friends called from outside where their motorcycles were already rumbling to life. The leader pushed through the door and ran to his bike. Within seconds, all 5 motorcycles were roaring out of the parking lot, gravel spraying from their tires. They disappeared down the highway just as 2 police cars came flying up from the other direction. Lights flashing and sirens wailing, and just like that, it was over. The moment the bikers disappeared down the highway, the entire diner seemed to exhale. That heavy, crushing tension that had been pressing down on everyone suddenly lifted. People started talking all at once, their voices mixing together in a wave of relief and disbelief. John Cena finally moved, turning away from the door to look at Lisa. She was still standing there, clutching her notepad to her chest like it was a shield. Tears were streaming down her face, but she was smiling. Actually smiling. It was the kind of smile that comes when you've been holding your breath for so long that finally breathing feels like a miracle. Are you okay? John asked, his voice gentle now. All that steel and authority from moments ago had melted into genuine concern. Lisa nodded, but then shook her head, then nodded again. She couldn't quite figure out what she was feeling. Relief? Gratitude? Shock? All of it at once, probably. I don't know what to say. You didn't have to do that. You could have gotten hurt. John smiled, a warm smile that reached his eyes. I've been in a wrestling ring with some of the toughest people on the planet. Those guys? They were all talk. Bullies usually are. The police cars pulled into the parking lot and 2 officers rushed through the door, hands near their belts, ready for whatever situation they'd been called to. But instead of chaos, they found a diner full of relieved people and one very famous face. What's going on here? The first officer asked. A woman in her 40s with sharp eyes that took in everything at once. Her nameplate read Officer Martinez. Pop stepped forward, still gripping his walking stick. There was an incident. Some bikers came in, got aggressive with my waitress here. This gentleman stepped in and convinced them to leave before things got worse. Officer Martinez looked at John, recognition crossing her face, but she was professional enough not to make a big deal about it. "Can you tell me what happened, sir?" For the next 20 minutes, everyone gave their statements. Lisa told the officers about how the bikers had grabbed her wrist and pushed her. Pops described what he'd seen. The truck driver, the elderly couple, and several other customers all confirmed the story. And everyone showed the officers the videos they'd recorded on their phones. The second officer, a younger man named Officer Chen, watched one of the videos with a grim expression. "We've been tracking this group for weeks now," he said. "They've been causing problems all over 3 counties. Harassment, intimidation, couple of minor assaults, but nobody wanted to press charges because they were scared of retaliation." "They threatened people?" Lisa asked, her voice small. "Not directly," Officer Martinez explained, "but they have a way of making people feel unsafe. They'd show up at complainants' homes, rev their engines outside at night, leave messages. Nothing we could arrest them for, but enough to make people drop charges." John's jaw tightened. "So they've been getting away with this for how long?" "About 2 months," Officer Chen admitted. "Started in the next county over, then moved this way. We've been trying to build a case, but without witnesses willing to testify." "Well, you've got witnesses now," the truck driver spoke up. "I got the whole thing on video, clear as day, and I'm not scared of some punks on motorcycles." "Me neither," said a woman who'd been sitting in one of the booths with her teenage daughter. "That poor girl was just doing her job. What they did was disgusting." One by one, other customers spoke up. They were willing to give statements, willing to provide their videos, willing to testify if it came to that. It was like John's courage had given everyone else courage too. If someone famous and successful was willing to stand up, then maybe they could too. Officer Martinez turned to Lisa. "Ma'am, if you want to press charges for assault, we have more than enough evidence here." Lisa hesitated. Part of her wanted to say yes immediately, wanted these men to face consequences for what they'd done, but another part of her, the part that had to think about her daughter and their safety, was afraid. "What if they come back?" she asked quietly. "What if they try to hurt me or my family? With all these witnesses and video evidence, we're going to bring them in today," Officer Martinez said firmly. "And given their pattern of behavior across multiple counties, the DA's going to throw the book at them. They're looking at serious charges. Harassment, assault, witness intimidation. They won't be bothering anyone for a long time." John stepped closer to Lisa, but not too close, respectful of her space. "You don't have to decide right now. Take some time to think about it. But just know that if you do press charges, you'll have support. These people here, they've got your back. And from what I'm seeing, these officers take this stuff seriously." Lisa looked around the diner, at Pops, who'd given her a job when she desperately needed one, at the customers who'd spoken up, strangers who were willing to help, at this celebrity who'd put himself at risk for someone he didn't even know. And she realized something important. She'd spent so long feeling powerless, feeling like she had to accept whatever life threw at her because she had no choice. But that wasn't true. She did have a choice. And maybe, just maybe, standing up for herself now would mean her daughter would grow up seeing that her mom was strong, that her mom didn't let people push her around. "I want to press charges," Lisa said, her voice stronger now. "They can't keep doing this to people. It has to stop." Officer Martinez nodded with approval. "Good. We'll need you to come down to the station later to fill out the formal paperwork. But we've got enough here to pick them up today." "Do you know where they are?" Pops asked. Officer Chen was already on his radio calling in the information. "We've got a pretty good idea. They've been staying at a motel about 15 miles from here. We'll coordinate with the county sheriff's office and pick them up within the hour." As the officers continued taking statements and making calls, the atmosphere in the diner shifted again. This time it wasn't fear or tension. It was something lighter. People started talking to each other, sharing their versions of what happened. The elderly couple approached Lisa to make sure she was really okay. The woman with her daughter gave Lisa a hug, and John quietly tried to return to his booth and finish his now cold burger. But that wasn't going to happen. "Excuse me?" Pops called out, walking over to John's table. "That meal is on the house. Anything you want, anytime you come through here, you eat free. That's a lifetime offer." John smiled but shook his head. "That's really kind, but not necessary. I was just being a decent human being," Pops interrupted. echoing John's own words. I know, but you did more than that. You stood up when nobody else would. In today's world, that means something. The other customers started applauding. It started with the truck driver, then the elderly couple joined in, then everyone else. The whole diner was clapping for John Cena, not because he was famous, but because of what he'd done. John looked a bit embarrassed by all the attention, but he stood and gave a small wave. Really, anyone would have done the same thing, but they didn't, Lisa said, walking over to his booth. Her eyes were still red from crying, but she was smiling genuinely now. You did. And I don't know how to thank you. You didn't owe me anything, but you helped anyway. You would have done the same for someone else, John said simply. I can tell. You seem like the kind of person who cares about others. Lisa thought about that. Would she have? She wanted to believe she would. And maybe after today, after seeing what courage looked like, she would be that person. Officer Martinez approached them. We're going to head out and coordinate with the sheriff's office. Lisa, here's my card. Call me this afternoon and we'll get you scheduled to come in for the formal statement. And Mr. Cena, thanks for being a good citizen. World needs more of that. As the officers left, the diner slowly returned to normal, or as normal as it could be after everything that had happened. People finished their meals, paid their bills, and left. But every single one of them stopped to talk to Lisa first, to make sure she was okay, to tell her she did the right thing by pressing charges. John finally sat back down in his booth. His burger was definitely cold now, but he didn't seem to mind. He was looking out the window, watching the world go by, probably thinking about getting back on the road. But Lisa wasn't ready to let him leave just yet. There was something she needed to know. Sarah nodded, tears streaming down her face now, but these were different tears. Thank you, she whispered. You didn't have to do that. Cena smiled warmly. Yes, I did. Nobody deserves to be treated that way at their job. He returned to his table, but before he could sit down, Joe approached with gratitude pouring from him. The elderly owner insisted the meal was on the house. When the police arrived, they took statements and mentioned they'd been tracking this particular biker gang for weeks, involved in multiple harassment incidents across 3 counties. The video footage from the diner's security cameras and the patrons' phones would help build a case against them. Before leaving, Cena did something that would change Sarah's life. He quietly asked Joe about her situation and learned about her daughter's illness. 2 weeks later, Sarah received a call from a children's hospital in Philadelphia. An anonymous donor had paid for her daughter's full treatment, along with 6 months of Sarah's lost wages so she could focus on her child's recovery. Sarah never confirmed it publicly, but she knew. The story spread through social media, not because Cena wanted attention, but because the other diners had witnessed something remarkable. It became a reminder that standing up for others matters, that treating service workers with respect is non-negotiable, and that real strength isn't about intimidation, it's about protecting those who need it most. Joe's Diner still displays a photo on their wall, John Cena with Sarah and her daughter, both healthy and smiling, taken 6 months after that fateful day. Underneath, a simple plaque reads, "Be the person who stands up." A year had passed since that Saturday afternoon when everything changed at the small roadside diner. The story had faded from social media, replaced by newer viral moments and trending topics. But in that little Pennsylvania town, the impact of what happened that day was still being felt in ways both big and small. Lisa stood behind the counter of the diner, pouring coffee for the morning regulars. But she wasn't just a waitress anymore. 3 months after Amy's successful treatment, Pops had made Lisa the assistant manager. He said it was because she was the hardest worker he'd ever seen, but everyone knew it was more than that. She'd shown the kind of strength and character that made her a natural leader. The diner itself had changed too. Business had picked up significantly after the incident. People who'd seen the video online would sometimes drive hours out of their way just to eat there, to see the place where John Cena had stood up for a waitress. Pops had to hire 2 more servers just to keep up with demand, but the biggest change was in how people treated the staff. Maybe it was because of what happened to Lisa, or maybe it was that reminder of how hard service workers have it, but customers were different now, more patient, more respectful. Tips were better, and if anyone ever got rude or aggressive, other customers would immediately speak up. The community had learned something that day and they weren't forgetting it. Amy was doing incredibly well. Her cancer was in remission, and the doctors at the Philadelphia hospital were optimistic about her long-term prognosis. She'd started third grade just a few weeks ago, and while she still had to go for regular checkups, she was living a relatively normal life. Her hair had grown back, thick and curly, and she was back to being the energetic, happy kid she'd been before the diagnosis. Every night before bed, Amy would look at the photo on her bedroom wall, the one of her with John Cena, and she'd remember his words about being brave and helping others. She'd started a kindness club at her school, where kids would do nice things for each other and for people in their community. Her teacher said Amy was an inspiration to the other students. Lisa had kept her promise to pay it forward. Every week she volunteered at the local community center, helping other families who were dealing with medical crises. She'd share her story, offer advice on navigating insurance and medical bills, and most importantly, she'd give them hope. She'd tell them that sometimes help comes from the most unexpected places, and that it's okay to accept kindness from others. The bikers never came back to that town. Officer Martinez had kept her word. With all the video evidence and witness testimony, the district attorney had built a solid case against them. The leader, whose name was Danny Kruger, received 2 years in prison for assault and harassment across multiple incidents. His friends got probation and community service, along with restraining orders that banned them from coming within 50 miles of the town. Officer Martinez had actually stopped by the diner a few months after the incident to update Lisa personally. "You did the right thing by pressing charges," she'd told Lisa. 3 other victims came forward after they saw you had the courage to do it. You probably saved someone else from getting hurt. That conversation had stayed with Lisa. She'd been so scared that day, so worried about retaliation, but standing up had not only protected her, it had protected others too. It was a powerful lesson about how one person's courage could create a ripple effect. On this particular morning, exactly 1 year after the incident, Lisa was surprised when Pops called her into his small office in the back of the diner. She worried for a moment that something was wrong, but when she walked in, she saw him smiling, holding a large envelope. "Sit down," Pops said, gesturing to the chair across from his cluttered desk. "I've got something to show you." Lisa sat, curious and a bit nervous. Pops opened the envelope and pulled out several documents. "You know how business has been good this past year?" "Real good?" "Yes," Lisa said. "The diner's busier than I've ever seen it." "Well, I've been thinking a lot about the future," Pops continued. "I'm 73 now. My knees are shot, my back hurts most days, and I'm getting tired. I've been running this place for 40 years, and I think it's time for me to slow down." Lisa's heart sank. "You're not closing the diner, are you?" No, nothing like that," Pops said quickly. "I'm offering it to you. I want you to buy the diner from me. I've had it appraised, talked to my lawyer, and we've worked out a payment plan that I think you can manage. Small monthly payments over 10 years. And I'll stay on as a consultant, help out during busy times, teach you everything about running the place." Lisa was stunned. She couldn't speak for a moment. Own the diner? Her own business? It seemed impossible. Like something that happened to other people. Not to single mothers who'd been barely scraping by just a year ago. "I can't afford," she started to say. "Actually, you can," Pops interrupted gently. "The business is profitable now. More than enough to cover the payments and give you a good living. And I believe in you, Lisa. You've got the work ethic, the heart, and the respect of everyone in this town. You'd be a great owner." Lisa felt tears welling up in her eyes. Again, she seemed to cry a lot these days, but they were good tears, happy tears, grateful tears. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll think about it," Pop said. "Take the documents home, look them over, maybe talk to a lawyer if you want. No pressure. But I can't think of anyone I'd rather pass this place on to." That evening, after her shift ended, Lisa sat at one of the empty booths with the documents spread out in front of her. The numbers actually made sense. The diner was bringing in enough money that she could make the payments and still earn more than she'd ever made as a waitress. She'd be a business owner. She could give Amy a stable future, maybe even save up for her college education. As she sat there, processing this incredible opportunity, the door to the diner opened. Lisa looked up, surprised, since they'd closed an hour ago. But then she saw who it was, and her heart skipped a beat. John Cena walked through the door, wearing jeans and a simple t-shirt, that same baseball cap he'd worn a year ago. He saw Lisa and smiled. "Hey there, Hope I'm not intruding. I saw the lights on and thought I'd stop by. Lisa jumped up from the booth. Oh my gosh. What are you doing here? I was in the area for a charity event in Pittsburgh, John explained. And I realized I'd be driving right past this town. Thought I'd stop in, see how you're doing. How's your daughter? She's amazing, Lisa said, her face glowing with pride. She's in remission. Doing great in school. She talks about you all the time, shows everyone that photo on our wall. That's wonderful news, John said, genuine happiness in his voice. I'm so glad to hear it. And how are you doing? Lisa gestured to the documents on the table. Actually, something kind of incredible just happened. Pops offered to sell me the diner. Me? Can you believe it? John walked over to the booth and glanced at the papers. That's fantastic. Are you going to do it? I think so, Lisa said. I mean, it's scary. It's a big responsibility, but it's also an amazing opportunity. And I keep thinking about what you said that day, about being brave and pushing past fear. Sounds like you've already made up your mind, John observed with a smile. I think I have, Lisa admitted. Yeah, I'm gonna do it. They talked for almost an hour sitting in that empty diner. John told her about his various projects, the charities he worked with, the kids he'd visited in hospitals. Lisa told him about her volunteer work, about Amy's kindness club, about how the town had changed. You know what's funny? John said at one point. I stop in diners and restaurants all the time when I'm traveling. And I've seen rude customers, seen workers get disrespected. But after what happened here, I realized that I need to speak up every time. Not just when things get physical. If I see someone being rude to a server, I say something. Politely but firmly. And you know what? Most of the time, people apologize and change their behavior. They just needed someone to point out that what they were doing wasn't okay. You're still changing lives, Lisa said softly. One person at a time. We all are, John replied. You with your volunteer work. Your daughter with her kindness club. Pop's giving you this opportunity. That truck driver who gave you money. All those townspeople who showed up to help. That's how the world gets better. Not through one big heroic moment, but through 1,000 small acts of kindness and courage. Before he left, John had one more surprise. He pulled an envelope from his pocket and handed it to Lisa. This is from Amy's hospital. They wanted me to give it to you in person. Lisa opened it and found a letter from the hospital administrator. It thanked her for her volunteer work with other families and mentioned that the anonymous donor who'd paid for Amy's treatment had been so impressed by Lisa's paying it, forward that they'd created a fund in Amy's name. The fund would help other families with sick children, and Lisa was named as one of the advisors who would help decide how the money was distributed. This is too much, Lisa said, overwhelmed. I can't believe this is real. Believe it, John said. You earned it. Not by what happened to you, but by what you did afterward. You took a terrible experience and turned it into something positive. You helped others instead of becoming bitter. That's remarkable. As John prepared to leave, Lisa stopped him. Can I ask you one more thing? Anything, John said. That day when you stood up for me, did you know it would turn into all of this? Did you know you were starting something bigger? John thought about it for a moment. Honestly? No, I just saw someone who needed help and I helped. That's all it was in that moment. But I've learned that you can never predict how an act of kindness will ripple out into the world. Maybe it doesn't go any further. Or maybe it changes everything. But that's not why you do it. You do it because it's right. He paused at the door and looked back at her. You're going to do great things with this diner, Lisa. And your daughter's going to grow up watching her mom be strong and successful and kind. That's the best gift you could ever give her. After John left, Lisa sat alone in the diner for a while longer. She looked at the photo on the wall, at the plaque that read, "Be the person who stands up." And she made a decision. When she became the owner, she wouldn't change that. She'd keep it right there as a reminder. Not just of what happened, but of what it meant. She thought about how much her life had changed in 1 year. How one moment of terror had somehow led to all of this hope and possibility. How a stranger's courage had given her courage. How one act of kindness had inspired hundreds more. Lisa pulled out her phone and sent Pops a text message. Just 3 words. I'll do it. His response came back almost immediately. I knew you would. Welcome to the family business, partner. Lisa smiled, gathered up the documents, and turned off the lights. As she locked the door and walked to her car, she looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, John Cena was driving to his next destination. Somewhere, Amy was sleeping peacefully, healthy, and happy. Somewhere, other people were standing up for each other, being kind, making a difference. And tomorrow, Lisa would come back to this diner not as an employee, but as its future owner. She'd serve customers with a smile, treat her staff with respect, and remember that every single person who walked through that door deserved to be treated with dignity, because that's what heroes do. Not just the famous ones, but the everyday ones. The waitresses and the elderly owners and the truck drivers and the townspeople, all of them standing up, speaking out, helping each other, one small act of courage at a time.